This is part one of my biggest project yet, and in this video I'm going to show you guys how I made this beautiful kitchen table out of nothing but pallet wood. In this first part I already took the privilege of cutting up a bunch of the top portions of the pallet wood that I took apart in one of my previous videos. All we're going to be doing here is running them through the joiner and prepping them so that we can cut them down to length. And here's a shot of me running all the pieces through the joiner. Now we do have quite a few pieces here, so this does take me quite a bit of time. Alright, we got them all joined down with this beautiful joiner. I freaking love this thing, even though it has an aluminum top. But check this out. Look at that. Look how beautiful these are. This is all pallet wood, guys. Just goes to show one man's trash is another man's treasure. For pieces like this, they're much worse here on the edges. We're just going to go ahead and rip it with the radial arm saw. And here I am running that wood through the radial arm saw to rip it. Now, when you're doing this, you always want to wear some protective eye glasses of some kind, because even with the guard on the blade, it's going to shoot some wood at you, and that can hurt. And there you have it. We have a beautifully ripped piece of wood here. Check that out. Nice and nice and flat and straight. Looks great. Next, I'm going to go ahead and measure the width between the blade and the fence so that we can begin to cut all of our pieces to the specified length we want, which will determine the thickness of the tabletop. And again, this can take quite some time, but I have a nice little system worked out here, so it went by pretty quick. Alright, so as you guys just seen, I made a nice little system here where I had all my boards on the table. These are going to be the boards that are glued together. They're all cut to a little bit over 1.25 inches because once we plane them down, we'll plane them down to our final thickness. So I was basically pulling them off the table, setting them through the radial arm saw, and they're all landing right here perfectly, just as I planned. So the next step is we're going to go ahead and start gluing these together, and then once they're all glued together, then we can run them through the planer. Now this part of the process took an insane amount of time. I probably spent a few solid days of just gluing all these little pieces together and keeping myself from going insane, because it felt like the equivalent of gluing together thousands of toothpicks. But in the end, I think it was worth it because it turned out to be an absolutely beautiful tabletop. And here we go into the next day where I continue the gluing process. And what I'm doing is I'm gluing all the little pieces into sections. I do a total of 4 large sections, and then later on we'll glue those 4 sections together. Now I pretty much continue this gluing process for the rest of the day. Some of my family comes by and visits while I continue working all the way into the night. And honestly, this time lapse goes on so long. I'm just going to cut ahead because I don't want to bore you guys by making you watch the entire time lapse. So it's another day, another beautiful day, and we have both of these pieces glued together. Although this is not going to be the whole thing, this honestly isn't even half of it, because we're going to make the table 3 feet wide. But I want to see what these are going to look like, so we're going to go ahead and plane them down. And check that out, guys. We have it beautifully planed down. This is some absolutely beautiful looking pieces of wood. I can't wait to finish this thing and put a finish on it. We have another couple of these pieces done. I need to glue a few more pieces on here. So we started off this beautiful morning planing down some wood here and sending it through the joiner. All we got to do is cut this down with the saw. I wanted to do something a little exciting first. I want to send this through the planer. This is my favorite part because I've always found it super satisfying to plane this down, and let's go ahead and check that out. freaking love it. Check that out. It's all nice and flat and smooth now. Now all I gotta do is finish gluing this one up, then we can send this one through the planer, and once that is done we can start assembling the tabletop. Alright, I have my wood transferred over here to the edge of the table. We're gonna go ahead and rip it. All I have to do now is adjust my radial arm saw, set it to rip, and I have a spare piece here that I'm gonna use to measure the distance between the fence and my blade. So all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put that spare piece right in there, and then we're gonna lock that in place. And that will be the distance that I ripped all these boards at.
And now we proceed to rip down some more boards. Basically just cut, rinse, and repeat.
Alright, looks like we are done ripping our boards. This is what we got done over here, which I think is going to be more than enough to finish this off and some. And on the left is our waste material. Alright, so we pretty much finished the glue up for the most part here. We do still have a few leftover pieces, but we have reached our desired length for this piece. We're going to go ahead and let this glue dry up, and then we'll send it through the planer. Alright, this glue is pretty dang dry. It's been out here for a few hours in this blazing heat, and we no longer have shade from the tree because the sun's over there. So I put up this umbrella that we have. I love this thing. And we have the planer set up. We're gonna go ahead and plane this bad boy and get her done. So we finally got all the glue ups done. Here's what they are all looking like. I got them all planed down to the same width. The next step to do is we're gonna get the ends nice and even, because I'm not really sure how well the camera will pick this up with the fisheye lens, but with the naked eye it's not perfectly flat, even though it may look like that in the camera. We're gonna go ahead and rip off the edges and see how straight and clean we can get them. As you can see, ripping the board eliminated that gap quite a bit. I don't see any gap between the board and the table, so I'm pretty happy and satisfied with the results. We're gonna go ahead and do the other side and rip the rest of these.
As we rip our pieces, I put on some eye protection. Never forget that. Safety always comes first. Then we move on to the next one and clean up the edge so that we can glue them together.
And that came out beautiful. As you guys can see, after ripping these sections, we have seamless cuts. At least when we glue them together, they will look absolutely seamless. We have minimalized the gap in between each section so that when we glue it, we don't have any issues with those gaps showing.
And now we proceed to do our final glue up. I glue each of the 4 large sections together one by one, because if I glue them together all at once, it'll be much more difficult to glue them together evenly. Gluing is always a very time-consuming part of the process because you have to wait 30 minutes in between each piece that you glue together. And right now I only have 4 large clamps to work with, but it's okay. I'm a pretty patient person, so as long as we can get the job done, I'm okay with it. Then right here we glue together the final pieces of the top, at least for now, so I'm feeling pretty happy at this moment. Right here I try to cut the ends with a skill saw and a straight edge, but it doesn't work out the way I want it to because the blade kept wanting to bind up and travel towards the level, so I ended up using the radial arm saw instead.
Alright, now that we got this table all sanded down, I went ahead and cut off the ends, and what I want to do next is fill in all these holes for the knots and other various parts of the table. And I'm using this wood filler I got from a local wood store here in my city, and this is the wood filler I'm using. This one is made for pine, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm gonna open that right up. That's what it looks like. So we're gonna get some of that, close that right up so it doesn't dry out, and start filling the holes.
So right here I spend the next hour or so just filling in the holes and then sanding them flat, and then I pretty much call it a night after that. Fast forward to the next day, I had cleaned up some 4x4s and prepped them to glue onto the edges of the top.
I went ahead and brought the tabletop here outside. I have some 4x4s right here already cleaned up and ready to be cut. So we're gonna go ahead and finish cleaning these up. I just got to do the side of this one, and then we're gonna cut some 45s in the corners and glue it on. All right, we have it all cleaned up, nice and planed down. Now what we're gonna do next is we're gonna go ahead and put some 45s on the ends of these. We're gonna bring it over here to the saw. Now you'll notice that the fence on my saw here doesn't have a pathway for the blade to travel through. So I'm gonna get another 4x4, place it right on back here, and we're just gonna use that as our fence, kind of. And we're just gonna place that right on there and line that edge up with the blade. I was having some problems getting a perfect cut because this table isn't perfectly flat. It's pretty close, but it's not quite perfect. So I went ahead and pulled this thing out. We got the miter saw, did some testing, and adjusted it perfectly to 45, and these are the beautiful results. So now that we got that down, I'm gonna go ahead and take these down a hair and get them to a perfect 45. So I got the saw set up here real nice. We're cutting our 45s beautifully. It's coming out awesome now. And here's one of our last but far from least cuts. We got the 45s all cut, but as we can see on this side, it needs to be cut just a little bit shorter. So we're gonna go ahead and take that down, and then we'll perform our glue up. Check this out. I just want to show you guys this real quick because I love how satisfying this looks. So I took down our hair. I thought I was gonna have to chop off a little bit more, but when we look at it, look how absolutely perfect that fits together. I just think it's super satisfying, the perfection. We did it, guys. We finished the glue up for one side. Once again, we have some clamps here up and down, and what these are doing is these just help hold, forget what exactly, I think they call these aprons, and this is just holding the apron flush with the top of the table until the glue dries. And you'll notice I have a piece of wood here both on the top and on the bottom, and I'll give you a view here on the bottom, and this is basically just helping push the table upwards a little bit. A few of the other clamps have it as well. I think I put it on this one. So in some parts the table itself needs to be pushed up, and in other parts the apron needs to be pushed down. So all of these clamps are holding it nice and flush to minimize the amount of sanding I will need once the glue is dried. Now that we got that side, we're gonna go ahead and use the straps and get this one on, and then we'll cut and clamp the last one. Alright, the sun's getting out, it's starting to get hot, so I got the umbrella out here. I'm gonna go ahead and glue this last piece on and call it a day. Alright guys, and we are pretty much done with it. The glue up is all finished, and I already took the liberty of sanding it down. Sander's right there. I had to swap out the bearing on that thing because the bearing took a shit on me. This thing doesn't even turn, it's stuck. But this is the table.
And finally, a view of what you have all been waiting for. It has been several days and it's finally starting to look like a table. If you guys want to see how I made the legs, subscribe and stay tuned in for part 2 of this series of my pallet tabletop build. Also, I'm starting a wood business selling some t-shirts and some of my wood projects later this spring. Link will be in the description if you'd like to sign up for my email list and support me. Thank you guys and have an awesome day.